The châtillon 25-ton is a Tier 10 French autoloading light tank. In fact, it was the first light tank ever introduced into the game in Tier 10. It is light though, only weighing in at 25 tons. Thankfully, it has a massive power-to-weight ratio of 32.4, boasting a ridiculous top speed of 65 kilometers per hour. As well, when you look at the gun, it's got 2,900 damage per minute, and for an autoloader, that's pretty impressive. It's also got great dispersion, fantastic aiming time, and 930 potential damage out of its magazine in a matter of 5.6 seconds from the first shot. So it's kind of got the whole shebang. It's fast, it's an autoloader, and it's even got light tank camouflage. So in today's video, we are going to be doing a full in-depth review on the autoloading Musketeer. Hello there, World of Tankers, and welcome to the channel. I'm of course your host, Droodles, Blitz, and in today's video, I'll be doing a full in-depth review on the châtillon 25-ton. This has always been one of my favorite Tier 10s in the game. I love the fact of camouflage, mobility, and incredible clipping potential, and it's not like this tank really suffers with its DPM. Having 2,900 for a clipper is incredibly strong. So, as always, in our full in-depth reviews, we are going to be breaking into the statistics of this tank, everything you're going to need to know about it there, and as well a bit on the armor profile. Sure, this is a light tank, but it actually has a surprisingly troll frontal plate, which we'll be breaking into in just a moment, and then obviously following suit with 2 ace tanker gameplays. So if you enjoy content like this and you'd like to see more in the future, as this takes a lot more time, editing, and effort to put out, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below. Getting straight into the statistics of the châtillon, one thing I've always found very weird about this vehicle is that it carries a 105mm armament. Now, what is so weird about that? Well, just to put in your mind, vehicles like the AMX-30B, Leopard 1, and even M48 Patton carry 105mm armaments. The difference is the damage per shot. The châtillon deals 310 damage per shot, and the M48 and all the other 105s on mediums deal 350. I've always found that kind of odd, especially because the stock gun on this vehicle is a 100mm that deals the exact same standard damage. So I don't know why Wargaming didn't just make the Top Gun as well a 100mm. It's nothing wrong with the tank, it's just something I've always found very interesting. When we actually take a look at the statistics of this tank, it's got an aiming time of 2.8 seconds and dispersion of 0.293, although I do want to point out that I am running refined gun, so the dispersion is a bit worse. I think it's 0.317 if you're normally running vertical stabilizers. It's got a magazine reload of 13.89 seconds, which is actually pretty quick. That's quicker than a full reload on a 60 TP. So because of that, you actually have very solid damage per minute at 2,862. That's really solid for an autoloading vehicle. Not to mention its penetration actually isn't too bad. It's 250mm on the standard and 325 on the premium. It's definitely nothing to write home about, but it's enough to penetrate E100 turrets frontally, although I will say the premium shell velocity on the heat is kind of lame. You'll definitely get a little bit sidetracked trying to lead your shells when shooting heat ammunition. It carries 6 degrees of gun depression, which is definitely not to be desired, although something that is to be desired is the mobility. This tank is very light, weighing in at only 25 tons. So because of that, it's very fast, 65 kilometers per hour forward, 23 in reverse, and an average speed of 47 kilometers per hour. It's got a freaking power to weight of 32.4. This is right up there with the T100 LT among the fastest Tier 10s in the game, especially when it comes to acceleration. It has 74 degrees of traverse speed, which means you're never going to have to worry about enemies flanking you. Although, one thing to point out is that the turret traverse speed itself isn't actually amazing. It's 43 degrees a second. Like, sure, that's definitely plenty, but when you have a tank that turns so fast on the hull, and yet the turret turns kind of slower than it in certain situations, it is definitely very odd. Another thing that feels very odd about the tank is that you don't have the best camouflage, and you also don't have the best view range. Vehicles like the T100 LT will completely outspot you in a bat chat, and so will tanks like the Vickers Light. So while you do have great camouflage in this vehicle, you are not the king of being undetected, and you have to be very careful in most of the battles you play, especially because with the only 6 degrees of gun depression you have and absolutely terrible armor, you're gonna be penned almost any time, and if you're up against hull down mediums like STB-1s or really really anything that has the opportunity to use armor against you, you are going to be in for one tough ride. However, not all is lost when it comes to the Bash Châtillon's armor profile. Sure, an Object 268 on flat ground will butter through this tank. The lower plate is only about 60 millimeters thick, which means HE shells will penetrate like no problem. As well, the upper plate's only about 116 millimeters. The turret is incredibly weak. I'm pretty sure you could throw potatoes at the Batchat and probably dent the armor. Even sideways, it's terrible. It's 40 millimeters thick on the side, 30 on the side of the turret, and don't even get me started on the rear. It obviously doesn't have any armor. But there's one part of the Batchat that trolls a heck ton of people, and that is when you actually use its gun depression. The upper plate becomes an auto ricochet. Now, if you're unfamiliar with how auto ricochets work, if you angle a piece of armor upwards of 72 degrees or more, AP and APCR shells physically cannot penetrate the angle unless 3 calibers rule is in place. Now, how does 3 calibers rule work? Well, here we have a 268. This has over 300 millimeters of pen, and we're running calibrated, and it physically cannot overmatch the upper plates. But an FE-Tune 5B183 can overmatch the upper plate. Now, why is that? It's because of the thickness of the plate itself. It is 60 millimeters thick, and because an FE-Tune 5B183 carries a 183 millimeter armament, if you multiply 60 millimeters by 3, the 183 has something called 3 calibers rule, which overmatches the armor thickness of the plate 3 times, which means no matter what angle you are at, a 183 physically cannot bounce a Batchat's upper plate, where a vehicle like the Object 268, where it does not have 3 times the caliber of the thickness of the armor, can't penetrate the upper plate. So it's something that's very interesting about the Batchat, and if that sounded confusing to you, I'd suggest just to go type in armor penetration mechanics, and Wargaming has a fantastic video on at least the PC side that explains all of this. But basically, think of it as, unless you're in a 183, you can actually get a lot of bounces, very troll bounces, on the upper plate of the Bash Châtillon. Out with the armor and in with our first replay being on Canyon. Now, Canyon is an extremely powerful map if you have gun depression and fantastic turret armor. Unfortunately, we have neither of those. My STB-1 Toonmate does, obviously, it's an STB. But yeah, the Batchat can't brawl anything when it comes to turret armor because you don't have any. And you also don't have any gun depression, nor do you really have alpha because you have a clip. But if you're fighting somebody that's hull down, it's not like you're just going to pen all 3 of your shells. That's never going to happen. So this is a situation where you feel quite useless in the Batchat. And you'll notice I purposefully am not going up mid-hill because I know that if I try to, it's going to be a terrible, terrible decision. So there you go. Easy shot into the side of the E50M, but yeah, I'm not really able to get any more shells out. So right now, I'm just patiently waiting, seeing what the enemy's going to do. But nah, whatever. We're just going to push up. Looks like that one shell scared him off a bit. So I'm going to push over towards base C. Maybe we'll be able to capture it. Obviously, if you're able to get base caps in Supremacy, you have a massive advantage over the enemy team. We've got an IS-7 right at the back. Easy shot once, but uh-oh. That is an SU-122. We fire one shell, just goes off to the side and ricochets. I'm going to shoot another shell purposely at his track wheel so he doesn't hit me. And I really don't want to fight a tank that has 4,200 damage per minute. So what I'm going to purposely do is make sure my VK-45 gets over here, supports me, and now I'm going to do what the Batchat does best, which is flank my opponent. Now, it's not really a flank because the guy's looking at me, but I'm going to aim one shell right into the side of his vehicle. We're going to go for 2 shells, but again, purposely shooting him in the track wheel, and you'll notice again, easy tracking shots. If you can track your opponents with autoloaders, you feel incredibly powerful because especially if it's a turretless tank destroyer like that SU-122, once I tracked him, there was really nothing that guy could do. And now I've got my clip loaded already. The C-50M really has no chance of backing up. So there you go. 2 shots right into the E-50M's rear and instantly reloading that clip once again. You always want to be reloading your shells in a Batchat. Sometimes you have very long intra clips. If you're in a 57 heavy or maybe a 4005, yeah, you're going to be sitting for a while reloading your clip. But if you're in a vehicle like a Batchat and you've only got around a 13-14 second intra clip or reload in total, it's not actually that threatening to just reload your clip and then start shooting once you've got your shells ready. Now, I don't know how it's possible that K91 like lifted its gun barrel and missed that shot. I really thought I was going to lose more hit points, but either way, we're doing pretty good. We're already up to 2,900 damage dealt in this game. And, well, I'm trying to think of what I want to do. I knew the IS-7 was somewhere towards this building back here. I was hoping maybe I could get a nice clip in, flank, run away, and do the same same thing again. Isolated targets are a really good advantage for the Batchat. If you can find somebody that's alone, like that K91, or let's say that SU-122, you feel incredible. Unfortunately, this IS-7 has pushed up a bit, but we're still going to be able to get 2 shells into the rear of him. So here we go, speed and power. Easy shell once into the IS-7's rear. I'm going to go for that trap wheel. Boom, stopping him from turning his turret and hull. And there you go, I was able to back on the cover. You can see just how powerful tracking an opponent can be. And if you're able to do it correctly, man, does it feel nice. So already, we've taken at least 600 off this IS-7. But again, I'm going to purposely track him. There's 2 tracking shells, although just repairs it when I shoot that in, but oh well. Looks like we're just going to finish you off anyway. We're up to 4,760 damage dealt in this game, and there's 1 opponent left, being the FV215B183. Now you'll notice in this game, I purposefully did not brawl the enemy mediums, and that's because, as I said, the Batchat is a terrible tank for brawling mediums. You really don't want to. We also had a really weird bouncer on that 183, but I mean, we're already up to 5,300 damage, so I really could not care too much about what I'm really bouncing at the end of this game. But yeah, as I was trying to say, when it comes to a vehicle like a medium, let's say the E50M or 907 the enemy team had, it's a terrible idea for me to try and fight tanks that out DPM me, that have turret armor, that have mobility, that can keep up with me. Instead, I'm going to keep my distance. And then when I have the opportunity, come up behind like we did on that E50M and clear the opponent. So because of that, we were able to make 208,000 credits to 5,500 damage, and as well come out with a pretty solid mastery. No complaints at all in this first game, and it really showcases you how you want to isolate targets, purposely stay away from the tanks that are very threatening, and slowly wither the enemy team down. The second battle we find ourselves spectating is on Yukon. I like this map, but I don't love it, especially when I'm in a Batchat. If you can use the mobility and you can flank your opponents, it's great. And Yukon is a huge map with a lot of corridors, so it does give me a lot of opportunities to do that. But at the same time, if my medium flank falls apart or the enemy heavies try pushing through medium side, it can be a really tricky battle. And the enemy team has 2 pretty decent players, so I'm going to be very careful on what I'm doing in the beginning and as well end of this battle, because you're going to see just where the Batchat comes in really, really clutch. I've said this in previous videos, but the Batchat, and it really has to do with any autoloader, mobile autoloaders, being able to store a lot of damage and use mobility is incredibly powerful, especially late game when you're trying to carry games that you really wouldn't have been able to carry if you were in a single shot vehicle. Storing damage and being able to use it over a very short amount of time is incredibly deadly. Although at the beginning of this game, you're going to notice I'm not really able to do any of that. So we've dealt about 600 damage so far, and sure, we got a bounce from that Jagdtiger, but wasn't really a bounce. He just shot me in the track. Trying to get past this WZ-113, and this guy pulls forwards. Very interesting. I was like, come on, dude, please, my guy. So at this point, I was like, well, fine. If I'm not getting past this 113, I might as well capitalize off of it. So let's get some shells into the T-5041. There's 1 shell, 2 shells, and 3 shots. Not too bad. But what is bad is what's about to happen to my team. The AMX-30 prototype dies right next to me, and yeah, my VK-72 drives right in there. So I'm leaving. I don't really want to fight with any of that. That's a terrible idea, especially because that STB-1 is peppering me across the map. Really don't want to sit there at all. But what I do want to do is clear the enemy 183. Obviously, the 183 is probably the biggest threat on the enemy team because it can easily hesh me. So I track the 183, my teammate finishes him off. And there you go. With that, I've got 1,000 assistance damage already, and what was one of the strongest tanks on the enemy team, at least against my vehicle, has now been taken out. That is great. Now I'm not a one-shot to any vehicle, even a grill max rolling me. We spot the 113 camping in the bush, and I'll be honest, shooting at this 113 was kind of sad for this guy's state. I don't know why he thought camping there would be a good idea, but I figured, well, if the 113 is going to be camping there, I might as well shoot at vehicles that are actually threatening my team right now, so get 2 shots into the side of the Jagdtiger, but oh boy, my team is not doing great. With that, the IS-7 just finishes off my VK-72, and right now it's a 3 versus 5, and the enemy team has a lot of hit points left. Thankfully, this 113 has no clue what's going on in his world right now, so there's 1 shell, 2 shells, and 3 shells into his tank. With that, we just took off half of a tier 10 heavy, and now I'm just going to sit and cover. I'm going to reload my clip. Obviously, this is not the best player, but it does showcase where you want to play the Batchat and what its playstyle kind of is like. I'm going to purposely shoot a tracking shell into his vehicle, and because of that, he misses his shot. I'm going to get 3 shells again into the 113 and then just back in the cover. I mean, we're already up to 4,500 damage, but you'll notice that I specifically picked a target that was isolated from the rest of the enemy team. I know that those 2 weak players in the enemy team are very deadly opponents, and if I try and brawl them while this 113 still full health and this guy can actually use his hit points, it could end very poorly. And obviously I don't know the skill level of this guy before I'm fighting him, so my biggest idea was clear the 113. It's the highest health opponent, it's isolated, my teammate can hopefully survive as long as possible, and while that's going on, maybe, just maybe, we can clutch this victory. So right now it's a 3 versus 2, and that's not great. But obviously my E3 is spotted, and the enemy's probably looking at my E3, and well, no duh. There's the IS-7, and yeah, IS-7 just gets absolutely swamped by a heat shell. Obviously, using mobility and completely catching somebody off guard like that is pretty easy to do. And you'll notice I instantly started reloading my clip. Because of that, I was able to have my clip loaded when this STB pulled around the corner, and well, yeah, you can see what happened. STB gets absolutely taken out by my clip, and what was before a pretty easy defeat has now turned into a pretty easy victory. Unfortunately, my teammate misses the shot, which means, well, yeah, he gets taken out. But now I've got the advantage. The grill is spotted, and I'm not spotted, so I'm going to use my mobility, and I'm going to try and sneakily make my way around this grill 15. That guy was probably thinking I was going to be facing towards him. He's like, haha, he's not going to poke, but little does he know that I'm going to come up behind him. Now, the only way this grill would have been able to kill me is with an HE shell, but I know that HE has the opportunity of killing me. That's not a bad player at all, 60%er, so I'm going to play this smart, and I'm going to clear the enemy grill. And there you have it. That's a 6,087 damage game, and basically a 1 versus 3. This is where the Batchat feels amazing, and where you could have only clutched games in a vehicle like this tank. Sure, vehicles like the T100 LT, you probably could have gotten out a really crazy game, but when I was dealing with that IS-7 and then the STB pulled around the corner, it would have been much, much harder to clear enemy opponents. I really, really like the Batchat, and I always have, but it definitely has downsides. Just because you saw 2 fantastic battles here that showcased everything that goes great for the tank, there are many, many games where teams fall apart and you just feel absolutely useless because a vehicle like the Batchat really struggles to do things in a losing battle, especially against enemy mediums that you aren't able to clear. So I love the Bat. It's an influential tank, an incredibly influential tank, but you have to know what you're doing, and that's why I definitely think it's one of the highest skill cap tanks in tier 10. Let me know if this video helps you out at all. Now, for any of you that want to know my equipment loadout, I'll just pop it up here really quickly. I just like to run Refined Gun to get that little bit of boosted dispersion, but that's obviously personal preference. You can also easily run V-stabs and get away with it, but that's my personal choice. If you're running armor on it, you're a weird person. I don't know what else to say there, and I should be running Toolbox. I don't know why I'm running Enhanced Tracks, but yeah, hopefully all of you enjoyed today's in-depth review. This was a long video, took a lot of time to make, so hopefully you enjoyed it, and yeah, I'll be making more of these in the future if you'd like to see them. Other than that, I thought this would be a great tank to talk about because it's getting PBR in the future, very hard to play, and it's one of my favorite tanks in the game, so bye-bye.